weekly profit in dollars made by selling X portable game systems, I love how they're avoiding like actual names of things, is P of X equals negative 1.5 X squared plus 170X minus 150, with the restriction that X has to be between 0 and 166. Okay, so it says right there that we're selling X number of game systems. So in other words, they are restricting that we cannot sell more than 166. Why would there be a restriction on the amount we could sell? Why can't we sell negative game systems? That doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to sell something, you should sell a negative number of them, right? So we don't want to go lower than 0. And why would there be an upper limit like 166? Do you think there's manufacturing restrictions in materials and time that it takes to build them? Yeah, so this is a restriction per week, right? So basically they're saying we simply cannot sell more than 166 per week. We don't have time and materials to make more than that, or whatever the reasons are. Okay, so we are going to graph our function. We're going to include the X and Y intercepts as well as the vertex and the axis of symmetry. So basically everything we just did on our little starter, only with a more complicated problem. So let's do that. Let's do our negative b over 2a. So 170, negative 170 over negative 1.5, 2 times negative 1.5. Sorry, I'm not paying attention. All right. So somebody calculate that for me. I would throw it in a calculator. I don't know why I erased all my work from last year, so I'm counting on you guys to help with calculations. About 56.6. Let's call it 56.7. Okay, so there's the X value of the vertex. How do we find the Y value of the vertex? So negative 1.5 times 56.7 squared plus 170 times 56.7 minus 150. I'll throw it in my calculator. You guys throw it in yours, see if we get the same answer. We're going to get a rounding error because I rounded it to 56.7. So I got like 14,000, it looks like. 311 and maybe approximately 34 cents, but there could be a rounding error there. I gave you a hint by putting a dollar sign on it. Maybe you wouldn't have thought of that, but I'm thinking about what the problem actually means, right? Now, how do you graph something with a vertex that's such weird numbers? Labels. It's all about labels. You get to make your graph look any way you want it to look with the correct labels. So our vertex is at 56.7, 14, 311. So I'm going to put a dot right there, and I'm going to call that 56.7, comma 14, 311-ish, right? So that's that point right there. Now, what did you notice about our parabola? Is it going to open upward or downward? We probably should talk about that first. What's the sign of the A value? Out here? It is negative. What does that tell us about our parabola? Yeah, it's facing downward. Remember, just go x squared restriction of 0 to 166. So there's one of those points right there. 166 would be somewhere over here, I don't know. Right, if this is 56, then that would be 100. I don't know, we can estimate that. That doesn't mean that that's an actual point on the graph, but I'm just making sure my graph goes that far. And we'll take it from there. Okay, we've got the vertex. We know the axis of symmetry is right here. So we know it's going to be symmetric there. I guess we don't know for sure that that's an x-intercept, so maybe I shouldn't have put a dot there, but I was just trying to imagine where the domain fits into this. So let's go ahead and find the x and y intercepts. The y-intercept is pretty easy. Well, that answers that question. Where's the y-intercept? Negative 150. So since that's at 14,000, negative 150 isn't going to be as big as that. So negative 150 sounds like a lot, like it's going to be really low. But consider the scale of my graph at this point. I'm just approximating. Just fine in most cases. Right, let's find the zeros. So we could try factoring this thing, but I don't know about you, it seems a little overrated. So what do we do to find x-intercepts or solutions when we don't want to factor or it doesn't factor? That's when we use our favorite thing called the quadratic formula. Hey, here we go. X equals negative plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's plug in our numbers. So we have negative b, which is negative 170, plus or minus the square root of 170 squared minus 4 times negative 1.5 times negative 150 all over 2 times negative 1.5. Now really this is just something you're going to want to plug into a calculator, just crunch through it, basically. So make sure you understand order of operations. So when you're using a calculator to do something like this, because of this plus and minus, you want to put it in your calculator twice. Once with plus and once with minus. The other thing you want to do is you either need to put parentheses around this part before you divide those, or you need to actually hit enter before you divide the bottom. Because order of operations, your calculator will follow, will have it do division before it does addition or subtraction. But in this case, that's all in the numerator. So we need to do that addition or subtraction before the division. Your calculator won't do that unless you tell it to. So you would tell it to do that by either using the parentheses or hitting enter before you divide. So just some hints for getting those correct answers. Decimals are fine. Obviously this problem is full of decimals. That's real life for you. It's always a little bit messy. So I'm just going to take this in. Negative 170 plus the square root of 170 squared minus 4 times negative 1.5 times negative 150. Close the stuff in my square root. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And then I'm going to divide that by negative 3. Because 2 times negative 1.5 is negative 3. Okay. So that gave me 0.889. So there's one of my x-intercepts, right? They're really close to 0. Let's do the other one. So same problem, but this time I subtract. So negative 170 minus the square root of, and if you know how to like repeat stuff in the calculator you're using, you can pull it back down and use it again. Although you're restricted to being able to use like scientific calculators. I know I'm using a graphing calculator, but some scientific calculators are better than others for typing stuff in and retyping it, like having it redo it for you. Okay, 170 squared minus 4 times negative 1.5 times negative 150. Those parentheses get entered. divided by -3. Ta-da, 112. Okay, so 112, obviously we know there's an axis of symmetry, so it's going to be symmetric from there to there, and then it's going to go down there. Well, that's interesting. If we go ahead and sell 166 of them, what's going to happen to our profit? That doesn't make sense. I don't know enough about economics to make sense of the fact that that profit would go negative. I'm sure there's some explanation for it, but we don't have to worry about that right now. Let's answer question 2 and question 3. When it says interpret, that means take numbers, math, and turn it into real life. Explain what it means. So interpret the zeros. These are the zeros right here. What are those zeros telling us? We're going to make profits for what? Yeah, actually those points are not. That's where y equals 0, right? We'll have 0 profit, 0 profit from selling 1 or 112 game systems. Profit from selling 1 or 112 game systems. That's what those zeros are telling us, right? Because this equation represents profit. And x is the number of game systems. So if x equals 0.889, that's really close to 1. And 0.112, that's really close to 112. I just kind of rounded it. Because we're not going to sell 0.4 or 0.9 game systems, right? So that's why I just rounded it to whole numbers. So our zeros are telling us if we sell 1 game system or 112 game systems, we're going to have 0 profit. Why would it be possible to sell stuff and still have 0 profit, not make any money? Production costs. Perfect. Okay. So then, step 3, interpret the vertex of the graph. So this was the vertex right here at 56.7, 14,311. What does that mean? We have an x value and a y value. What do those numbers mean? Here's a hint. I put a dollar sign on the y value after I calculated it. Perfect. So it's kind of like the maximum profit spot, right? If we sell about 57 game systems, we will earn around 14,300 maximum profits. So that's sort of where our vertex is telling us right there. I feel like I've made a mess of this whole thing with how I've written it down. So that is the answer to number 3. Interpret the vertex. And down here was the answer to number 2. What are those zeros? We've just analyzed this function. Made it real. Okay, stop.